And let's see. Just waiting for it to go live on LinkedIn. Oh, it takes a minute. Welcome, everyone. We will get started in a few minutes or just a minute here. Please go ahead and drop your name and where you're dialing in from, any questions you have for Joe, and we'll get started in just a minute here. All right, just getting the room. Oh, and there's Justin. Perfect timing.
No, this is late for me. I apologize.
Oh, and we lost him. Justin is having some technical difficulties. He also had a fire drill this morning. So we all know what fire drills are like if you're a project or program manager. So he's working his way in. Still having some tech issues, some video issues. But we will go ahead and get started nonetheless, or nevertheless. So thank you everyone for joining us today for this morning to give us an hour of your time for in your offices, in your homes. So I am super excited to say that for this session, we are joined by PMO Joe. He's the founder and CEO of PMO Squad Staffing. He's the PMO Influencer of the Year for the Americas, and he's a global PMO leader and talent. He's a global voice in PMO leadership and talent strategy. He has over 25 years of experience leading teams and organizations to deliver successful outcomes across industries. And today he leads PMO Squad Staffing, where he helps companies solve one of their toughest challenges, which is finding and retaining top talent in project management. And he has a simple mission, which is to help you all connect with organizations that demand results. He also focuses his work on organizational project delivery, or OPD, which is going to be the big thing we talk about today. And it's a model that integrates project delivery into just the overall fabric of the organization, the same way you'd see with operations or HR or finance. So with all of that, welcome, Joe. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elizabeth and Justin. Happy to be here. And, I think on top of that, first and foremost, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a community member, I'm a music lover, movie buff, sports fan. I'm just a regular guy, right, that has been fortunate in life to have found what I'm passionate about is also something that I'm good to and able to do, and be lucky to be able to turn that into a career. You can see by the gray hair that the career has been going on for a while, but I'm just a lucky person. I've been able to have great mentors through my life that help me really point me in the right direction, and I get to live the life I always dreamed I'd be living.
See, this is why we are very thankful to have you here. You're such a humble leader. We appreciate you for being here. Thank you. Let's kick things off.
Yeah.
So what is OPD? What is organizational project delivery? Joe, can you give us a kind of a brief synopsis to set the stage?
Yeah, my favorite topic, right? So I'll give some background on it as well as explain what it is.
Yeah.
And the background is for 50 plus years, we've had formal project management, which has been focused on an individual effort to lead a project or a program or a group of projects, a portfolio. In our industries, regardless of your location around the world, there's some association that's been working to make you better as an individual at what you do. And that focus has been an inward focus in our profession towards the profession itself and not the work we're doing within the organization. But every project that we run is not created out of the PMO. It has been requested by the business. It is staffed by business resources. It produces a business outcome. And the focus of our industry continues to be inward in nature, to certify PMs, to build PMOs, to establish PMO maturity. And it hasn't been about the organization getting the value out of project management, just like they get out of operations.
Yeah.
So organizational project delivery is a complete enterprise approach for project delivery across the company, so that the entire organization understands what project delivery is. And it's not dependent solely on a PMO to be the only part of the organization who's focused on delivering projects. Kind of similar if you think about, a couple decades ago, Six Sigma was all the rave. And you would get a few Six Sigma black belts who were the expert. Let's call them the PMP project managers. But everybody in the organization would be a yellow belt or a green belt, right? Everybody would get trained on the concepts, because the entire organization would benefit from understanding how to eliminate waste, how to be more efficient, how to drive process improvement. Similar concepts with OPD on the project space. We should have some black belts, some PMPs, but the black belts don't have to run every project.
Right.
So the accidental PM, a lot of times we'll call them, right, in marketing or accounting or engineering, wherever they may work. Let's make sure they have the skills to be able to do the job as well. Not the same as the PMP. They don't need to have all that. So an organizational approach, as opposed to a PMO approach, and as opposed to a PM approach. How do we bring the entire organization along on the journey to benefit the entire organization?
We're both probably about to say the same thing. I do want to come back to in a second how you're talking about the organizational approach, the PMO approach, and the PM approach. I think that's going to be an interesting distinction, as well as like the marketing PM versus what other PM is. But I wanted to emphasize something you said is the projects are there to serve the business, right? And this is something that Justin and I say over and over again. Business' survival is based on revenue generation, cost savings, market position, or risk mitigation. So every time a organization is planning their projects every year, there's certain criteria they're evaluating that goes back to the overall survival of the business. And the strength of the PMO, in this case, the strength of an organizational project delivery, is that they are there to support the entire organization. And that's that big difference that you're emphasizing. Is it goes back to the being strategic partners, not being siloed.
Absolutely. Yeah, if we think about it, a great example people are familiar with, no matter where they're located, where you're joining us from, is Apple and the iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't anything Apple does that's more important than the iPhone. And every September, the iPhone gets a new version released. It doesn't happen in October or November. There's no option for it to be late. It comes out in September. So the entire organization, regardless of which department you work in, you don't put anything that would conflict with the output of that phone being released in September. All companies should be thinking that same way. What are the priorities for the company, and how do we collectively ensure that we deliver on the most important projects?
So let's unpack that a little bit further, because that whole element is that departments have their own priorities, and organizational senior leadership have a broad roadmap that is either shared or not shared, depending on the level of detail here. And we know that projects are a mechanism towards business survival. We've covered that extensively through your experience and through the Apple example. But where is the disconnect? Is the disconnect that project managers, they're not trained to understand the business ecosystem? Or is it that the entire enterprise is not understanding where project leadership comes into play and how that can help towards that business mechanism survival?
Yeah, that's the $64,000 question, right? If we know what's broken, then we can go fix it. Here's the picture I'll paint to describe this.
Mm-hmm.
If you're working in a high-rise building, say you're in a building 10 floors, before any tenants come into that building, they're building the infrastructure of this building. They've got plumbing, electrical, the elevators, the stairs, the offices, the windows, the air conditioning, the HVAC, all of that is in the walls and infrastructure of the building.
Mhm.
That's how organizations exist for operations, right? Accounting is the electrical. HR is the plumbing. We'll give them the plumbing, right? Engineering or manufacturing or whatever could be the HVAC. They're pre-built into the building. So they all work together. You've got a thermostat to change the temperature and it works perfectly. Project management in the PMO is a new request that comes in after the building's been built. The entire building is about building the widgets or services that we produce and sell for the business to exist. Project delivery is about changes and enhancements to those things to make it be better, efficient, grow, innovative, whatever it would be. We didn't wire the building for change. We didn't wire the building for something we didn't know about. We didn't leave conduit open with nothing in it yet. So when we come in with OPD, what we're saying is we have to go back through the entire organization now and add space for the wiring for project delivery to exist that isn't there. Right now, it's a add-on. It's like in the basement, we've added a new room to the building, but it doesn't plug into the building yet, right? And that's what PMOs historically have done. They've isolated themselves. They build PMO maturity, but not organizational capability. They go flip the light switch to deliver a project and it doesn't come on. But when they flip the light switch to do operational improvement, it comes on because it's pre-wired to do those operations. We have to figure out how to wire our building, the company, the organization, to accept project delivery. And right now, that's the major disconnect.
So when you work with an organization where the building's wired, but you don't have that project delivery piece in there, right? How do you approach that? I mean, are you approaching it as we're going to build a PMO that will then work with all of the different pieces, all the different departments? Or are you potentially just going, no, we want project managers in the different departments, but we might have some type of governance to oversee it? Like, how do you build that so it's not siloed, and what's that right approach to make the PMs be strategic partners and not just siloed? We're just helping track budgets and schedules.
Yeah. We still build a PMO, just like there's still an accounting department, there's still an HR department, engineering department, right? You still need that functional expertise. So we still want to build maturity and capability in a PMO. Absolutely. But what we have to do is not do that in a silo. We have to work at all levels of the organization to understand and build a culture that's about acceptance, right? Of project delivery. A great example I use, everybody is aware of this. We've done a bunch of surveys. Every organization out there that's in this industry has done surveys on what's your biggest challenge at your organization with project delivery. And always in the top three, usually number one, is resource management. And I'm still curious as to how this became a project management problem. The only resources who work on a project that belong to the PMO are the project managers. Every other resource has a home somewhere else in the organization.
Yeah.
It's an organizational problem. And they look to the organization that's not plugged into the infrastructure of the building to try to figure out how that works and solve it. So we always start there. We always start with, where are your resources? What is the capability? And we take a capabilities approach as opposed to a maturity approach. You can have the most mature PMO in the world, and your organization could have zero to limited capability to deliver projects. We want to have capability and maturity. So you still want to have PMO maturity, absolutely, but it has to extend beyond the PMO into the organization. So for us, we have to go wire the organization. We have to build the conduit in the walls. We have to do a construction project inside an organization to build the space to allow that electricity to flow up to every floor and every office and every person. So when they hit the light switch about project delivery, the lights come on. Right now, there's nothing there to push. It's a disconnect. They just always look to the PMO, and the organization doesn't have the power to be able to deliver consistently.
So we have a couple questions around this in the chat specifically. I'll pull up two of them. The first one comes from Michael, and he's looking for, do you actually have a specific approach of like a roadmap you go through when you're building in a PMO to be as part of the organizational project delivery?
Absolutely. We have and obviously this is what the PMO squad does for a living. So it's a little bit different than maybe a PM inside your own organization. But we have what we call a discovery period where we go and interview all levels of the organization and ask them about project delivery. How does it happen? What would you like to have happen? How does resource management work? How do you do the financing, et cetera? It's a big, long questionnaire we have. And what we do after that is we capture all that data and analyze it. And for us, it's about 80% of the findings we find during discovery, which is identified by the members of the organization themselves, are organizational challenges, not project delivery challenges. Yeah. So when we come back to them to show, this is what you told us, it's not a heavy lift to try to get them to change because they already know it. They just had nobody focused on that discussion to organize the analysis of the problem. There's a benefit of why people have Accenture and Deloitte and McKinsey and all the others out there. They're willing to invest money and to get experts to come fix this for them because they know that's a problem, but they're focused on building their widgets. They don't have bandwidth to come in and fix that problem. So a great question, Michael. But for us, it's helping the people with the problem admit that they have the problem. So when you try to sell the fix, you're not selling a fix, you're selling their words back to them.
Yeah. And we have another question in a second, but I want to emphasize something because this is part of what you're talking about. Is it's also fundamental to change management, which is actually going to tie to Ken's question in a second, is any time or transformation, change management, transformation, any work you're doing, the discovery work you're doing, this is that current state assessment where you are reaching out to all of the organizational members and you're understanding what works, what doesn't work, what's been put in place, why it's been put in place, right? And you're also determining who maybe is against the change, maybe who's for the change, how to get people on your side, which goes to Ken's question here, not fully of the executive sponsorship, but how do you get buy-in and support, right? So I just kind of want to speak to that because this isn't just from a PMO perspective you're talking about. These current state assessments, you see this across any type of transformation project or program in any organization. This is what needs to happen.
Yeah. And I know Ken, thanks for taking time to join us. Yeah, absolutely. If the top of the organization doesn't support it, it's just like a project without an executive sponsor, it's going to fail. So absolutely, this change is from the penthouse to the basement. Right? Keeping with our analogy of the building, we have to run the wire all the way up to the top because prioritization comes from the top. If they don't buy in and understand what we're doing, you're not going to be able to get the right throughput on prioritization and resource management, the change that you're going to need. This isn't a project management only solution. That's why it's OPD. It's organization. It starts with the O, right? Antonio Nieto Rodriguez has a new book out right now, and I love Antonio, and he was a guest on my show when I had it. And he talks about a PDO, a project-driven organization in this new world order we're living in. And I love it, very closely aligned to OPD. I just think he's got the letters in the wrong order. The project isn't the important part first. Yeah. The organization's the important part first.
I was going to ask you that because I read his theory that he wants to establish strategy in projects instead of the organization driving the strategy and then projects being the enabler. So I appreciate that. But there's one thing is if we want to be an organization project delivery entity, how do we get away from the cognitive bias and the, we'll call them conflicting agendas?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the culture of the organization.
Sure.
It's only a conflict because we've created an us versus them of operations versus projects. when the culture is they both coexist for the benefit of the company. And by culture, we mean even bringing it into things like your performance evaluation.
Right.
Right now, if you're a project manager, you have a performance evaluation at the end of the year that involves projects. Well, if you're a marketing analyst, you should as well, because both the operations and the project should be tied to the overall performance of the company through strategic planning and goals and projects and operations work. I shouldn't have to, as an individual, choose to only do my operations work because that's how I'm going to get my raise next year. It should be, I need to do projects and operations to get my raise next year. And when we create the us versus them culture, organizations are built for the operations. They're built for the creation of the widgets. Remember, the building was built with the infrastructure for operations to happen. We're not in the infrastructure of the building. So when we are trying to get added to that building, it automatically changes the culture. And the resistance currently is what we experience when we're only focusing on improving the PMO side of that.
Right.
Again, this is why we have to go top to bottom of the organization, basement to penthouse, understand what the thoughts and experiences are with that. And when we interview line workers, whatever that line may be, marketing, manufacturing, et cetera, they tell us over and over and over again in every single industry, I'm here working because I have to support my family. My supporting of my family is my paycheck. Next year, costs are going to increase and I need a bigger paycheck. My performance is where my paycheck increase comes from. And the only thing I'm measured on in my performance evaluation is my operations work. Why would that person ever commit as much time to projects as they do operations if they're not going to be able to support their family in the same way? It all comes down to psychological safety in that case. Right? There's so many different elements involved in how organizations work and the people within those organizations. And historically, we've only had this PMO and project management mindset. We're missing out on organizational design, systems thinking, and so many other factors that are in play as to what project delivery is really, really at its root all about.
Right. Because it's all around that operational readiness and business continuity. If you don't have those projects, they're just noise.
And the reality is the line worker who's focused on operations wants to work for a profitable company that's performing well. In order for that to continue over time, there will be projects that makes operations better and easier and bigger markets and more revenue, but they're not making that connection that they're a part of that. That's somebody else's problem. That's the PMO's problem. I'm part of the marketing team. My marketing job is to go get marketing stuff done.
And that's the problem.
You're both part of the same team to get the organizational stuff done.
How do you manage that? So how do you make project delivery be everyone's responsibility, not just have the marketing person only care about marketing? How do you get people to realize it's everyone's responsibility and then support, the PMO and be incentivized to deliver projects like that and to think through that?
The reality is it's happening in a shadow world today. Right? That marketing analyst is already running projects. He or she is doing project delivery already. We call them, right, accidental project managers because they're not PMPs, they're not CAPMs, they're not ACPs, whatever your affiliation is. But their boss has said, I know you're doing this, but you've been here 5 years, you're great at what you do. Can you go do this? And that's a project that they're working that's aside from what their daily routine is. In an OPD mindset, what we say is, keep doing that, but notify us that work is ongoing because right now we don't know about that. So we can't report as an organization all of the value that's coming out of projects. Or if you're struggling, let us know. We may have somebody that could help you with that. Or here's a training program, not to get you PMP certified, but just to give you a little bit of information on how to capture scope correctly, how to do a status report that's informative. We're not trying to become heavy-handed that we have to add extra layers to stuff. We just want people to be more informed and more capable, right? OPD is about capability and acceptance, right? Not maturity. We don't need to have that man in marketing be as a mature project manager like we would get from a black belt project manager. We just want him or her to be capable to do their job well. So they're doing it already.
Yeah.
We just have to make it be safe to talk about it in the open. Right now, it's behind closed doors. It's in the lunchroom. It's walking down the hall. It's at lunch, right? Bring it out in the open. We expose this. We talk about it and build a culture where this is accepted, where we want to improve upon it, and how we're helping each other with it.
So let's expand on that for a moment of layering projects as part of performance management. Do you have any metrics that you would suggest? I know that there are a few that you could talk about it from an execution standpoint, but what would you include for a performance review for an individual who works on projects so that they're held accountable and also that it ties towards the growth of the organization?
Yeah. I'll tell a story here on this one. Before the show started, Elizabeth and I were talking about different things. And one of them was I went to work at Wellstar Health System in Atlanta, and I had never worked in healthcare before. So they brought me in because I had non-healthcare experience, and it was an uplift for me to learn a new industry. Well, when I started, I was the executive director of the PMO, and my first performance evaluation, when I signed in and looked at what my evaluation criteria was, the first thing on my list was wash his hands. And I was like, what in the world? What, like, I'm the director of the PMO. I'm not a heart surgeon. Why is this on here? So I went to my boss, Dr. Morris, and Dr. Morris was an emergency room physician by day, and at night he was the CIO. And so he was in both worlds, right? He was a technical person, but he was an emergency room physician, literally practicing emergency room physician. And he told me, Joe, what you have to understand is everybody in our organization has to know that the number one cause of infection and death in our healthcare system is infection. And the number one cause of those infections is not washing your hands.
Wash his hands.
So you, as a PMO director, are part of our organization. And the number one thing we have to do is wash our hands. But Dr. Morris, I'm not ever in an operating room. I'm not around patients. And he said, do we ever have surgeons or physicians come to our administration building? Well, yeah, of course we do. Well, maybe they get something from dirty hands. And then, so it started to sink in with me, right? Oh, I get it. I'm part of the organization. It may not be for me specifically. So in a project world, when we think about that marketing analyst, a great example, Justin, for this could be organization delivered strategic project initiatives as planned. So it isn't a specific project. It isn't a specific on time, on budget. But if everybody has an objective that we had 5 strategic goals this year, and we're all working to accomplish those 5 strategic goals, some of them may be operational, some of them may be project. It doesn't matter. Why are we categorizing that way? They're strategic goals of the organization. Get everybody invested in the same 5 things. So we're rowing the boat collectively, not someone trying to go to the right and someone trying to go to the left. We're all trying to go straight. That's the whole goal of an example of a measure that we could put in place for that type of thing that is also input into culture.
That's a good call out. Or straight organizational goals that apply regardless of the level that you're compounding in or participating in. I know that my current employer, Hitachi Digital Services, actually does that. So it's nice to see that we can correlate that to other organizations. But I was wondering if on the planning side, the strategy side, the co-partnership side, because when you look at departments, they're always going to have that P&L fight that's happening. So have you seen organizations that are a little bit more mature in this kind of regard that try to cut through that P&L scarcity and have a metric that talks about collaboration or pull through or anything like that? Thanks, E.
Yeah. And I'd go one step further to say, again, you had asked about the maturity to do that. And I'd say, I don't care about the maturity to do it. I care about the capability to go do it.
Which I love that. I love that you said that, because that's how you scale. is through capability. And you can become more mature as you go, but yeah, that stuck with me when you said it's capability and not maturity. I think that's 100%. That's how you scale. That's how you can slowly add new process or change or get other people to collaborate. It's about who can do what, how do we achieve these goals together? So I love it.
Yeah, and to dig deeper into Justin's question on that, right? It's the P&L is part of the strategic planning, profit and loss management, all of that is part of the wiring of the infrastructure of the building that when the building got built. Right. It's currently built only for an operations flow.
Right.
So when they do that, if I'm the manager of, again, we're picking on marketing here, I'm not doing that intentionally, just randomly. So the senior vice president of marketing or the chief marketing officer, he or she has a strategic plan that they're going to work on, and their team members or, I have directors and team members working on that. If I'm a manager over social platforms and my performance evaluation, again, is tied to me completing specific tasks, but maybe there was a strategic planning that was tied to community outreach.
Yeah.
Well, the strategic plan community outreach isn't going to get me a raise next year because on my performance evaluation, it's only social platform posting. Those managers, the structure of the P&L and is out of alignment with the managing towards strategic outcomes of the organization. So that's why we want to go all the way up to the top on OPD. We want to ask and see what's your capability of aligning strategic planning to annual planning, to monthly planning, to forecasting, budgeting, and all of those things. What's the capability of having? And again, we just ask them, show us what you do. And through question and answer back and forth, we say, well, what do you do when you're not aligned? And they don't have an answer. I say, okay, we have a defect in the process. It's not a people problem. Your people are fantastic, but there's a defect. Let's address the defect. You don't have capability today to have this alignment in place. Let's talk through a workshop or whatever we would need to solution elimination of the defect. No different than the Toyota manufacturing system on the production line, right?
Right.
The line workers and the TMS, right? The line worker pulls the lever and says, I found a defect in the process. The line shuts down. The managers come out of their offices, walk over to that person and say, what did you find? They determine, are we going to fix this problem? They do, they remove the defect and it goes on. And the person who did that was the line worker. Not every solution has to come from
The top. No.
up above. But what does the Toyota manufacturing system allow? A conduit for all of those people to identify the defects and remove them from the system. It's built in as part of the culture.
Yep.
So we want to do the same thing with OPD. Build the conduit for all levels of the organization to build a culture where project delivery has a light switch that can go off when it's pushed.
Conduit for all levels of the organization.
I love it.
So
I love it.
I want to come back to that statement, though. You said capability, acceptance, not maturity. I'm not sure if I'm completely bought on the concept that maturity doesn't have a play in here. But if I remember to our original outline, we talked about how do we measure maturity, and it's not just processes. So could you expand a little bit more on what you mean by the terminology maturity?
Yeah. Well, first concept I want to tie into, there's a great book out there that I absolutely love. It's called Both and Thinking. In the Western world, primarily, where all of our education comes from, for at least the people on this conversation, it's an either or system. Is it true or is it false? Is it chocolate or is it vanilla? Is it A or B? The real world lives in a both and world. It isn't maturity or capability. It's maturity and capability, with the understanding that maturity has a ceiling and capability doesn't. So we want to have maturity. 100% we want to be mature with our processes, our people, and everything. But we then need to take that maturity and advance it to ensure that we're capable and reach the capability level that we think we have when we have maturity. Real world example again. I have a 16-year-old son. I have 4 children. Youngest is 16. So what happens at 16? You start driving, right?
Unless
He,
you're
as my youngest, he's probably the maturest of my 4 kids at this age. And he was probably 14 and had the same maturity of my oldest when he was 17 or 18. That didn't mean he was capable to go drive a car yet. It just he had more maturity. What we waited for was when the capability was there to get the maturity to produce the results we wanted. Right? So we see this all the time around us in organizations, in our daily life, at companies, at when we're consumers and go to restaurants or buying clothing or whatever it may be. We can see there's somebody that's behind the point of sale system that's a very mature system, and he or she is struggling to hit the right keys to get the output that they need. There isn't a maturity problem there, it's a capability problem. And that's what we have in organizations with project delivery.
I want to kind of switch gears because we have like 6 or 7 questions in the chat, and then we still have other topics to hit on. So I want to jump to some of the questions. Some of them we touched on a little bit earlier because we've been holding on to them. So I'm going to go just down the list. So the first one, it's not specific to what we were just talking about, but the first one was, Ken asked a question about resources, the best way to kind of manage shared resources in a matrix organization, or how do you manage that within the organizational OPD world?
Yeah, I think first thing I'd say is we're a project delivery organization and expertise in that, not in resource management and HR. That's not our strongest suit, of course, right? That's not our specialty. So in this example, I'm thinking it's resource management and the PMO mindset that Ken's asking about. In this world, again, we work with the organization and we ask them again, what doesn't work with resource management? Typically a response comes back, well, the PMO doesn't understand the work that they're working on. Okay. Question number 2, how do resources get their evaluations done? Well, the PMOs don't provide any input into that. Okay. Question number 3, who approves the resources? Well, their resource manager does. PMO doesn't have anything to do with that. In the organization, when we ask them these questions, they keep self-identifying that the PMO is not involved in the equation. So then we come back and we'll say, okay, through process analysis, I think we've identified a defect that the organization is asking the PMO to manage a process that it has no involvement in. Can we address the defect, or do we want to keep casting blame onto an organization that doesn't own that function?
I don't agree that the PMO doesn't. So the PMO is supposed to facilitate. So if you've got a strategic PMO and they're part of the organization as strategic partners to all of the other teams, that should be part of the planning, part of those discussions and change control when you need to swap resources because one of the shared resources has to get pulled somewhere else. So it might not be like a direct ownership, but it is kind of like an adjacent ownership. So I do feel like the PMO should still be part of that. They still have to raise these things. They still have to kind of work across the board for it.
I didn't say they shouldn't be a part of it.
Yeah.
Right?
He's diagnosing the gap. So
Yeah.
You're thinking they should, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're not our resources. You know, if John Doe is the manager and Jane Doe works on a project, why am I going to go tell Jane Doe what she should work on? I'm not her boss. I don't have her priorities. I don't have her performance evaluation. I can point out that we have a project need of 8 hours.
Yeah.
And the role that we need is XYZ. I'm not there to tell you what person we need. I'm there to tell you what role we need. It's up to the resource manager to identify the right person to fit the role.
Yes, I agree with that. But it's still our job to raise that, facilitate that conversation to help say, this is what we need to be able to deliver this project to be able to meet the organizational goals.
Project part of it, yes. But remember, the other part of this, there's operational activities. Yep. And 100%. So that's why it's a conversation beyond the PMO. We don't own that. We shouldn't own that, and other parts of the organization should.
1 minute. I want to call this out because Ken pointed it out. The only thing that worked for us was to have a % weighted average input to the team member performance evaluations, which is brilliant. That's what was the phrase? You only get what you measure. I think that's the idiomatic phrase. So if you put something towards that, then yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So a question from Michael. Would it be fair to say that the roadmap for operations to take on a completely new widget, Apple first year releasing the Apple Watch, for example, is comparable to implementing OPD in an operations-driven organization? You got to reread this.
So operations take on a completely comparable. I think similar, right? If we're adding a new product to the mix, it sounds like what Michael's question is. You have to adjust operations to add in a new product. Yeah, so you're going to go through some form of transformational change, right? Apple used to be called Apple Computer Company because their main product was computers. They're now just Apple because they still make computers. I'm on one right now. But the majority of their revenue comes from services, right? Not even hardware anymore, but phones, number one, but then services, number two. So absolutely, there had to be structural changes to add those new products, right? Apple didn't used to make television shows. Apple didn't make movies. Now they do. So absolutely, OPD is similar in concept to that you're going to have to rewire and do some conduit, some construction in the organizational design for that.
All right, let's go to 2 more questions and then jump back to kind of our conversation, and then we can wrap up at the end with the rest of the questions if we can get to them. So this one, how are roles and responsibilities redefined between PMO and OPD to avoid overlap or accountability gaps?
Yeah, I'd say first thing is there doesn't have to be kind of a realignment or redefined. The PMO is still the PMO. The PMO doesn't go away. The PMO is still running projects, still has accountability for the expertise around project delivery, but we may want to include training if you're not doing that today, and some workshops, some lunch and learn, some after hour sessions, whatever it may be, the culture of your organization to make that fit in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the PMO doesn't go away. The PMO is still a function.
Right.
The overlap comes when maybe Jane Doe in marketing is an accidental project manager, and she or he is going to take on new work or project that's going to do that. Again, we don't have to run that in the PMO. We just want the whole organization to understand the impact of that project happening. Case in point, you may have a strategic objective that the CEO and the C-suite set, but a localized manager pulls that person to work on something, and that person was working on a project. Now they don't have time to do both. So does the organization have the conduit laid to make decisions about what activities are prioritized for resources? And if not, we just identified another defect, and we're going to sit down and work with the organization to understand how to overcome that. So we don't need to think PMO roles changed. PMO still exists. It's what additional services does the PMO offer to make the organization more capable in delivering projects better.
But I think something that you allude to in all of your answers is that it's a two-way street. It's not just the organization understanding the project concepts and how it ties to business survivability, but the PMO and project leaders also need to have a better understanding of business acumen and tying it to the strategy. Do you have anything that you would emphasize that PMO should prioritize to learn right the second that they don't generally have a grasp on?
100%. You hit that nail absolutely on the head. Project managers are 100% business people first. And we historically have been focused almost exclusively as an industry. I'm not saying individual people, because some are better than others, but as an industry, we focus on our project management capability and maturity. Mm-hmm. For me, what I used to do and what I did personally and when I was leading teams is get people out into the business, right? And when a PMO gets disbanded, what do they always say? The PMO didn't know enough about the business. We're going to put the PMs back into the functional units so that they can get it done. The organization already solved this problem. It's very common for each business unit to have a finance rep.
Yeah.
The finance rep is a member of the finance team, right, the accounting team, but they attend the staff meetings of the marketing team. And then they report back and forth. They have a relationship management role. PM should have a relationship management role. We should understand how the business operates so that we can work with them. We can speak their language. We can be the translator that understands PM speak and business speak, and we can talk both languages. So absolutely find ways to plug PMs into the business, not just on projects, to ensure that we understand how the business operates, the culture, the language, all of that. Because today we're in the basement in this little closed off closet with no conduit connecting us to them, right? Again, they hit the light switch, nothing comes on because we don't have any wires running down to the basement right now.
I mean, that's the key to build the business acumen, to be advocates. That's how you grow in your career, be seen as strategic, is you understand how the business works, how the different teams work together, what the goals are, like the why behind the work we're doing. That's what's important, is we can drive that forward. We see the system, we understand the trade-offs to raise. So 100% agree with you on that.
Let me a quick real world example. When I worked at Cessna Aircraft, I supported the sales team, the communications team, the legal team, like all the back office functions plus sales. And I would sit in the staff meeting with the senior vice president of sales. And I would listen to what they're trying to accomplish. I would sit in with the chief legal counsel. I would sit in with the chief marketing officer and listen to their conversation. So when it came time to execute projects, I didn't have to guess what we were doing. I already knew what we were doing because I was plugged into that business mindset.
Exactly. And that, beyond the fact that that's what we teach, that's also how I've built my entire career. When you talk to the business in their language and not in the jargon that you're taught in textbooks, they suddenly, their ears raise up and they're more willing to provide you information in that informal communication. And that is how I was able to get more key information ahead of time, reduce the amount of risks, and also build the rapport between, let's call them more technical teams and the business teams together by bridging that gap. And so it's great to hear that come from you as well, PMO Joe. We appreciate it.
I can't believe we're getting close to time here, and we have so many questions. I want to get to the last talking point we promised people, but then I'm hoping we can shift back to the questions, because this is such a rich conversation. We could have had this go for like another 30 or 40 minutes probably. So let's shift to the last thing, then we'll come back and try and answer the questions. If we can't answer your question, we will get Joe to reply in the comments later. We have a lot of questions, so we'll do what we can to get to you guys. So really quick, I'm going to pivot to, because people do care about this, and we said we talk about it, which is the roles that PMOs are hiring for right now. If you're seeing specific trends, and you staff specifically for PMO, project, program, business analyst, maybe another one that's adjacent, but you see what people are asking for these types of roles. And just if you have anything that you're seeing in terms of trends or anything specific to roles, that certain pieces of those roles, they want this responsibility or this capability or not another.
Yeah. This is so passionate for me right now, our organization. So for the first 12 plus years of the PMO squad, we were a PMO squad, right? And then about midway through last year, I said, we're gonna add another alias to us, and we're gonna be PMO squad staffing as well. And we're hashtag let's get PMs back to work.
Yeah.
I've reached a point in my career where, of course, it's great to be able to be successful myself, but I want to help others be successful. And right now in the US, so I can't speak to completely around the world, way too many project managers are unemployed. The economy is not where it needs to be. Project managers are being let go. Businesses are choosing not discretionary spend on projects. It's keep the lights on, business as usual work. So we're doing everything we can at PMO Squad staffing, to be the conduit to help organizations find the talent they need, and to help the talent find the organizations they need. Let's get PMs back to work, right? So what are we finding? There's a supply and demand misalignment right now. And we just posted a job for a great contract to hire position. It was open for 4 days only on our website and out on the job boards. And in 4 days, we had 1,100 people apply. Had that been 2+ years ago, after 2 weeks worth of time, so 3 times as much time being open, it would have been probably about 300 applicants. So we have 4 times the number of applicants in 1/3 the amount of time. Supply is far outpacing demand today.
Okay.
So what does that mean? The rates that you would get are down.
Wow.
Just like if you're trying to sell your house and supply of homes is exceeding the demand for homes, your home price goes down. Doesn't matter what you think you're worth or your home is worth. It's what people are willing to pay for that service. So understand, you get a lot of people who come to us and say, no, I want X an hour. I'm sorry, that was 2 years ago. I hope that changes later this year, but right now it isn't paying that much. Number two, with supply that big, the details of your experience matters. Before, if you had your PMP or not your PMP or whatever your certification would be, a Scrum Master or other, maybe it didn't matter. Today, it matters because guess what? There were 1,100 other people who applied who had that. Number three, switching careers and industries. We had somebody who was a school teacher who wants to break into project management. Guess what? Wrong time. There's so many unemployed project managers. You're not going to career shift right now and become a project manager and get a job. Just not going to happen.
Right.
And then fourth one I'll add is the remote, hybrid, and on-site. It's still out there. People are still remote. There's people are definitely going back into the office, but the days of I'm only going to be a remote PM because I can get away with it are gone. Because again, the supply is too high. And there's people who now will travel back to the office because it's been 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year that they've been out of work. And they need a job, like literally need a job to be able to keep their mortgage or pay their for their healthcare or their food. So it is a tough job market for project managers in the US right now. And you've got to be on point for your interviews. Stop applying to every job that's out there. You're not going to get a job through an application, most likely.
Right.
Spend your time building your network. You're going to get your jobs based on who you know, because there's too much. We don't have the bandwidth at PMO Squad to get through 1,100 applications. So AI goes through and eliminates 400 or 500 of them off the top. Yep. And then we get through and we start going from who scored the highest on our AI scoring system at the top. And if you're near the bottom of that because your resume didn't line up or whatever it may be, we never even get to you to be able to evaluate you, and you may be a great fit. Competition's too high.
And this is why we emphasize that you need to put that fit in your resume. Function, industry, technology tools that are relevant to the job. Otherwise, you're not even going to be looked at anymore.
And be prepared to back that up in the discussion, because if you're just trying to align your resume to match the job requirements to get the interview,
right,
you're going to come across in bad light. Right. And you want to make sure that you can back it up. So I agree. Make sure you're getting captured in the AI searches, but back it up. If you can't back it up, you're going to be eliminated. And you took away an opportunity for somebody who was qualified to get an interview. And think about your brothers and sisters in this industry right now.
Yeah.
If you're not qualified, stop applying for something that's going to take away from somebody who is qualified.
You know, it's hard. I applied for a job the other day, knew the recruiter because I had interviewed for the company before, was a solid fit for this, and the budget knocked me out originally, but he's like, I still ran your resume by the VP, but you don't have enough like ERP, CRM, transformation experience. Well, that's been my entire career, but the job description wanted me to emphasize something else. So it's also that game of how do you optimize to balance all of this too. So it's hard. So we still have a lot of questions. I think we might only get through one or two more. Justin, is there any specific one you want me to tackle, or just choose one that I can find here?
Let's pick a question from someone who hasn't asked a question
That's what I'm
yet.
looking for. Yeah.
So I think Michelle McKinney has a question.
Which one?
What it doesn't address is why organizations. Oh, that's a statement. Sorry.
And Joe, I think we're going to have you back because we have so many questions in here. Clearly people want to hear about this, and we only made it an hour conversation.
Happy to come back whenever you want me.
We definitely have a lot of questions.
And thank you to everybody who's listening in with your interest and questions and curiosity on this. A couple of things to point out. If you're in Europe, I'm going to be the keynote speaker at the House of PMO conference in June. You get me live and in person for a couple of days. And I'll be in Saudi Arabia in June, right before that as well, speaking at the Global Project Management Forum. So just
saw
two
that.
things. If you're
Yeah.
not local here to the States, you can get me in other parts of the world as well.
Okay. Well, it's awesome. That's why you're PMO Joe, man. Okay, so you found one.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people there's a lot of the same people that ask questions too, and I'm trying to give some people like fair chance to get a question answered. So Fatima asks, many organizations use PMO to run process instead of projects. The functional managers do it. In that organization, is a PMO really needed?
Yeah, frankly, I think it is, but again, I can't speak for all organizations that are all different. 80% of the organizations in the United States have fewer than 200 employees. Okay. So does a 100-person organization need to have a PMO? Probably not. So do they need to have capability to deliver projects? Absolutely. So for Fatima's organizational situation, I don't know if that fits. I don't know the size of the organization. I don't know the scale. That's why we do discovery at the beginning to understand the organization. And we don't come with an off-the-shelf answer, right? Everything we do is the purpose of your specific organization. So maybe, probably not the best answer, Fatima, but that's I think it depends.
I wrote a post on this the other day, and I said not every organization needs a PMO. At least you're not at that level of maturity or large enough that you need it. There's different layers to put it, and that would be found during discovery, to your point, right? You can have a lot of project managers, but not have a formal PMO. But start with shared terminology, then move to governance, it's shared visibility. There's layers to build. And then as you have the capabilities, you can continue to mature and maybe eventually build a PMO. But the PMO isn't always the first answer, but it might be an answer you eventually get as you mature and build the capabilities.
Yeah. And I think I misspoke when I said 80% of the organizations have 200 or less. I think it's actually 98% of the companies in the US have less than. So that blows people away when they hear it, and they don't believe me. And then I ask them to go research so they find it themselves. But really, only 2% of the companies in America have more than 200 people. Right now, they employ half the workforce. That 2%.
Right, they have more of the revenue. That 2%.
That's right. But when you go try to solve a company, again, 98% of them, really the smaller companies struggle the most with this because they don't have that expertise in house.
Correct.
100%. So I'm still trying to kind of skim through these questions, but I think we're seeing a lot of people are really enjoying this conversation. We've got powerful topic from Ken. This is a really rich subject. I think we'd love to have you back. I think we're going to have to answer a lot of these questions in the comments after, just because there's a lot to get through. So thank you for being so active in the chat, guys. We love it. We just didn't get a chance to get to it all. So I think, yes, we'll try and bring him back if he's willing to, and kind of keep digging into this. But Joe, where can people find you?
Yeah, obviously on LinkedIn. There's only one PMO Joe out there, so please reach me there. The PMO Squad, thepmosquad.com for our company. If you run an organization looking for talent or services to help you get better at project delivery, we'd love to help there. I also started a nonprofit organization. I want to make sure we get that out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's called VPMMA. It's the Veteran Project Manager Mentoring Alliance. And in this organization, we help veterans and military spouses transition to civilian project management careers. Very passionate about that. Also co-founded the PMO Leader Global Community. Go out to a website and or LinkedIn where we help PMO leaders around the world improve at their work. And then, of course, I'm one of the co-founders of International PMO Day, and that's always the second Tuesday of May.
Oh, really?
Yes. So second Tuesday of May is International PMO Day. I co-founded that with Lindsay Scott, Eileen Roden, Laura Bernard, Americo Pinto, and Leo Torres. So a global initiative to help celebrate what we do as PMO leaders. I got my hands in a lot of cookie jars out there, all about trying to help project managers do stuff better. And let's get PMs back to work, right? Let's help our brothers and sisters get back to work. Use that hashtag, forward our stuff out there when necessary, and let's get people employed again.
I love it. And we've got a lot of big thank yous in here right now. Great session, informative, inspirational. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your skills. Great conversation. Lucky to have you here. So thank you so much. I think, guys, if you're in the comments, if you're in the chat, if you want to hear about other specific things for us to bring him back, please let us know specifically what those topics are. Some of it will be just deeper diving into this stuff. Some of it could be something a little bit different. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. We loved having you. We'll have you stay on for a second when we end the stream. And to everyone, again, thank you for giving us an hour of your time in your homes, in your offices. Time is it's valuable, so we really appreciate you taking the time to. Yeah, it is precious commodity. That is the word I was looking for. So thank you so much, and we will see you next week for I think it's the dark side of project management with Kyle Maiden.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Bye. Cheers, folks. Thank you.